Hello again, and welcome to International Love Story, a podcast about long distance and multicultural relationships. My name is Christina, and I'm going to have a conversation today about a topic we've talked about in the past a couple of times, but we always just scratch the surface. And I invited two guests, Panka and Jasmine. Panka is currently living in Hungary together with her boyfriend, and Jasmine, close distance with her husband a couple of months ago. She's living in Finland now. And we are going to talk about closing the distance, because the work is not done by just closing the distance. We're going to talk about what to expect before closing the distance, while closing the distance, and also after closing the distance. So, enjoy today's episode. And with this being said, I'd like to welcome Panka and Jazz. Just go ahead, introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm very glad to be here. I am from Hungary. I'm a 21-year-old university student. I am studying psychopedagogy and I would like to be a school psychologist in the future. And I've closed the distance with my boyfriend Michael, who is from Texas. And he moved here January 2020 after around 1.5 of long distance. So I think that's all that you should know for now.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Jasmine. I'm originally from the U.S. in Virginia, and I'm 29 years old. And Swans and I closed the distance in October of 2020. I like to talk about long distance relationships too on my website and other social media accounts, but we can always get back to that later.
We'll talk about that later, where everyone who's listening can find you guys. Right now, I would like to cover the topic closing the distance in 3 under topics, if you could say so, which are right after dating. So when you figure out, okay, this is the person I want to live together with. So the goal will be on the long run to close the distance. And then the next stage would be scheduling the first appointments, preparing for closing the distance. So that means taking care of finances, gathering together all documents. So that would be the second stage. And the third stage would be after closing the distance, because what I feel like a lot of people are forgetting due to that the goal is to close the distance, that there are a few other things to consider while and after closing it, as there are other challenges you have to overcome. So there might be a language barrier, you have to get used to another culture, and you're still working on the relationship, and you bring your relationship to another level. Talking out of my own experience when dating Nacho, I never had a moment where I was like super sure, okay, that this is the moment where we would like to close the distance. It just developed. But I never had this moment where I was like, okay, now it feels 100% right, and I'm just going to go for it. It was like gray area all the way, almost up to the end. And I would like to know how you guys felt. Like, let's start with Jasmine. Like, how did you feel when you dated Thomas? And in what moment did you realize that you would like to close the distance?
Thomas and I were friends a year before we started dating. And when we started dating and looked up like what it meant to be in a long distance relationship, we knew that closing the distance had to be a goal. So after we met in 2017, like we talked about it. Like we talked that let's set a goal right now for in 3 years, we'll close the distance. And we'll start doing like what we can in this 3-year time period to make that happen. And the last year, 2020, like that was probably the most up and down year though. Like I had saved all my money that like for living expenses to move out here, but as far as the month that it was going to happen in, it kept changing because of the pandemic. So like originally it was December, then November, and we just kept moving it up to a point where just like, I'm just ready to be with you. So the gray area for me happened like when we actually executed it, because it was just like, have faith and take that step.
For you, it was clear from the beginning when dating that eventually you're going to close the distance. And this is what you worked for.
Yeah.
So how did you feel, Panka? I mean, Michael moved for you to Hungary, and I guess you talked about it intensively before closing the distance. But if you are looking back, how did it feel, and what were your thoughts when it came to, okay, we might close the distance, and we do have a month and a year where we're going to close the distance?
So for us, it was a little bit different because so when we first officially got together around March 2019, it wasn't on my mind that we are going to close the distance at some point. I mean, obviously I knew that a long distance relationship can't just go on for forever, but it wasn't on my mind constantly that like at some point it has to come. In April, he found this job online that could move him to Hungary. And so he applied and he got selected. So we had a solid like 8 or 9 months to get prepared for closing the distance. So if I think back, it flies away so quickly, or it seems like it was a very short amount of time. But living in that moment, it was every day, it was so unsure if he's going to have the money, if the university will let him finish a semester earlier, if everything's going to work out, if he can fly here, if the company really will hire him. So it was a lot of insecurities. But we had a plan pretty early on, and it wasn't that like we were planning to close the distance as soon as possible, but it was an opportunity that somehow found him. And we just grabbed the opportunity because like we didn't know if we miss it, because like, oh, it's, you know, it's not long enough, or we haven't been together for long enough, let's just wait. Then, you know, who knows if there's another opportunity in a year or in half a year. So we just kind of grabbed this opportunity. And from then on, we knew that we're going to close the distance, hopefully in January. But everything else was still very, very insecure.
You just said that you had 8 months to prepare. So what exactly did you prepare? So how do you prepare yourself for such a big step?
First of all, like he had to complete a summer course to be able to do this job. So he applied for a job of teaching English. So he had to complete this 3 months teaching course. And for that course, because that cost a lot of money, so he had to work throughout the spring to get the money. And then he completed this course, and then he still had to gain some money to be able to pay for the plane ticket. And he had to graduate university like literally a semester earlier than it was planned. So for him, it was very busy. For me, I kind of didn't realize it up until the end, like up until December 2019. Obviously, I was very, very, very excited. And I've had all these daydreams about closing the distance. But back then in May or June, it seemed so unrealistic. Because we were still months away from January. And I remember that moment when he bought the plane ticket in December, it somehow felt real. It was still a lot of insecurity about it. And you know, it's never sure until it happens. But the fact that he bought a plane ticket, a one-way plane ticket to Hungary, made it somehow very real. That like, oh my God, we're going to close the distance in like a little bit more than a month.
Yeah, I would like to get back to that later, because I do think that this is also a very interesting and important topic to cover, like how the person who is receiving the significant other, so who's receiving the one who's moving, is feeling such a moment. And you just said that you didn't realize it up to the moment he bought the plane ticket, the one-way ticket. So yeah, as I said before I would like to get back to that, because I do think it's very interesting when I think back to our story, how excited I was. I took care of so many things, and Nacho was super relaxed up to the end. And the moment I moved to Miami, this was the moment he realized, oh, damn, she's coming. And he didn't understand, at least this is how I received it. So it would just be interesting to have another perspective. He didn't understand why I was freaking out in between, because for him, everything was easy peasy, because obviously everything for him stayed the same, except that he will just have someone, his significant other, flying over. So let's keep that in mind for later. You were also talking about a financial plan or the financial planning. And I do know that Jasmine is kind of an expert in that area, because Jasmine prepared herself like into detail. When the moment you knew, Jasmine, that you're going to close the distance, you worked on it. You had a financial plan, and you had everything sorted out. So how was it for you?
So like I said before, and we started talking about closing the distance in 2017. So the first 2 years, I really focused on getting down like any like credit card debt I had, or paying off as much as like student loans as I could. And then in that last year before I came out, I found like a template on Pinterest for how to save 10,000 in a year. And I was like, all right, bet I'm going to follow this template and save this much each week. And after like selling all my stuff, it ended up being $16,000 that I was able to save up. And I thought it was so important to do that, because to like cover the first 6 months of living here, like I didn't want us to be stressed out about finances. I wanted us to just focus on figuring out our new relationship together. Like I didn't want finances to be a struggle on that end. So if there was one difficulty I could cut out, it would be the financial side of things.
What is your point of view talking about finances in general? When it comes to money, do you feel like, in your case, Thomas, so Thomas was the one receiving you in Finland, welcoming you, that he has to be prepared as well, so that he has to basically, put in his, like the same effort, not only emotional wise, but also money wise, as you're doing?
We actually had like a money conversation like a few months after I really started saving hardcore, because he was like still going out, playing pool, doing all the same stuff. And just from an ex-boyfriend of mine and like the situation I had with him, I was like, yo, like we got to talk about how we both feel about money. We have to like be on the same page, because the money I'm saving up is my money. It can be ours after a certain point, but like this is my money, so I know that I am safe. If I need to go get back home and like figure out things, I am covered. The saving up was more of like me protecting myself. Like, I mean, I'm always going to hope for the best and plan for the worst. But we had to sit down and talk about how we viewed money. Like, how did we see money when we were kids? What experiences did we have in life that made us view money as we see it now? And that topic was very, very important for us to talk about. And I'm glad we did, because like made me not feel as resentful towards Thomas, like while I was like working hard to save all this money.
I can only agree with that. We didn't do that. So this is why I'm also agreeing, because I had a hard time. I took all my savings. At that point, it was in US dollar, I think around 8,000 US dollar. And for me, it was a lot of money at that time. So it was like everything I had, and I brought it to Miami and I spent it in 4 months, which is crazy to think about. But paperwork was so freaking expensive. And then also in the beginning, I couldn't work for approximately 3 months until I had my work permit. And those are all things you have to take into account. And I was just too shy to talk about money, because as I said before, it's a very sensitive topic, and for us Germans in general. So I think it's also a cultural thing. But if I would do it again, I would definitely talk about it before, because I do think that both partners have to do the same effort after all. And I think it's also, after all, it would also be fine, for example, to ask for half when it comes to the paperwork you have to take care of, because talking about the US at that point, it was $2,500, and that's a lot of money. I didn't ask him for money, and everything went fine, but it could also have gone the other way, you know, that I was also prepared for the worst thing to happen. Obviously, it didn't happen. Luckily, it didn't. It could always have been that I have to take the next plane back home, more or less, and to carry all my things back to Germany. I don't know. Is this something, Panka, you guys talked about, or was it more that it just developed and after all you managed it somehow?
I can only agree with Jasmine, and I think it's very, very important for both of the parties to have their own money, because like everything can happen. It can happen that you have to go home or you find yourself on the street because you can't stay where you wanted to stay. You can't just be there penniless. And also from the other side, it's important to be each other's equals in this field too. So it can't be that like your other half spends all their money and everything on the plane ticket, on the hotel, and I'm just still going out every night and spending all my money, and I don't care about finances. Like, we made it sure from the beginning that we are together in this, and we both were trying to gain some money for ourselves as well, but for us. So, for example, as he bought the plane ticket, I paid for the Airbnb that we were staying in for the first week, and I was very cautious about not spending so much money, because I knew that obviously, as he had a lot of things to pay for, when he first comes here, I will be in the better financial situations, and we can't just be there like, oh hey, I just spent all my money on this course and the plane ticket, I don't have any money. And I can't be like, oh, I don't have any money either because I was out with the girls last Friday night. So we were trying to save enough money for both of us to feel secure. And that's why, for example, we chose to close the distance only after he got work. First of all, it's one of the easiest ways to get a visa when you actually have a workplace here. So I think we don't even have this fiancé visa kind of stuff in Hungary. And if you have a job and if you have a contract and you know that in, 5 days when you start working, they're going to pay you, that's already something that gives you so much security. Because, if you travel there and you don't have a place to live, or you don't have a job there, and you only have, $500 in your pocket, it's very, very, very risky, even though your partner has more money or they are able to provide for you if you run out of your money. I know it's not possible for a lot of people, because, you can't just go to job interviews online usually. And we were very lucky to be able to find this opportunity. But I'm an advocate for, try to find a job first, when you decide to close the distance, or as Jasmine did it, get prepared financially and save up as much money as you can, because, anything can happen. Maybe the job you applied for doesn't exist, or maybe you have to travel back like a week after. You have to have some money for yourself to feel secure.
And also, if shit hits the fan, I think this is the English expression, which describes it pretty good, but to be prepared for the worst case and to get your things back home. And besides the financial aspect, what else is there to take care of before closing the distance?
All the paperwork. Well, and not just the paperwork you have to do when you go to that country, but the paperwork you need to bring. You need to make sure you find all your records of everything. I didn't go as extra as I should have in this area. I know if a lot of people recommended I get my own medical records and bring them over. But I had been to so many doctors, from moving a lot in the U.S. anyways, that it was just too complicated for me. But if there's one thing I wish I could have done, is get my medical records from the U.S. and brought them over here with me. But, making sure you have your birth certificate, your social security, like all your paperwork that says like, this is who I say I am.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, looking up and researching what you need to do to get in that country. Like, to get married in Finland, I had to get my baptism certificate when I got baptized in like 2001. I had to like call my church from back in my hometown in Beaver Dam and be like, yo, y'all still got records of this? Oh, nice. Please mail that to me so I can get married. And like, even the like final weeks before closing the distance, like I was still running around to like my bank to get things notarized. So like for all the paperwork. So it's as soon as you can look up what paperwork you need and print all that out, the earlier you can do that, the better. Because that way you can just be more organized and just have everything in one binder
and don't worry about it anymore. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't do that. I freaked out instead. Talking about freaking out, Panka, how did Michael handle the whole situation before closing the distance? Was he calm, or did you sense that he was anxious?
He was super calm most of the time. He was very well prepared. He got all his papers too, and the valid passport and everything that he needed. So he was really like a man in this situation, but in like a good way. So he was very realistic. He was very calm about it. Like, yes, I have this and this and this, and I will travel. And he was totally calm for some reason. But obviously, before closing the distance, like in like 2 or 3 weeks before, obviously he realized what's gonna happen. And I wouldn't say he freaked out, because it's not a good word for it. He was starting to feel maybe a little bit anxious, obviously sad, and maybe there was a little bit of fear in that too. So we actually got into this minor fight. I wanted him to spend some time with me because that's what we scheduled. And then he was like, but I want to spend time with my family because who knows when will I see them again. And he was worried about one of his dogs who is kind of old, and his grandma who is also kind of old. So obviously when he realized that he's going to move here, and neither of us know still to this day when he's going to be able to go back, it was obviously very hard to him emotionally to handle this situation. But it was for a day or two, and we talked about it. I tried to be there for him for some emotional support, but I knew that he had to deal with this alone. By himself, and he had to prepare himself mentally and emotionally for the moving. So despite these 2 or 3 days, he was surprisingly calm, and it was me who was the anxious one.
I'm just laughing because Jess is just
those last 2 weeks though.
She's agreeing because we had a major fight as well. So there are a lot of similarities in the story you were just telling, Panka. We had a very big fight before we closed the distance, because I felt like he's not knowing what's going on. He doesn't know what I'm giving up. I had a good job. I still have amazing friends, so we're still friends. I have a big family here in Germany. Like, he's not aware of what I'm giving up here in Germany. And I don't even like Miami. I didn't want to go much. I still, up to today, I still don't like Miami. I mentioned it a couple of times in other podcast episodes already. But I felt like he doesn't understand my point of view. And it was so difficult for me to make myself understand, because I wasn't aware of what's going on right now. I was like, okay, I don't know. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what I want anymore. Like, okay, let me just freak out for 10 days. And I freaked out. So I'm not overdoing by freaking out. I mean, like, I freaked out. And Jess is just like, okay, she did the same.
Yeah, I feel both of you. I feel you, and I feel your husband too. Because like, obviously I was trying to understand him as much as I could, but I couldn't, because I've never been in this situation, leaving everything behind. And like, I think he wanted to understand it too, but we were just not able to, because we weren't in this situation. And thinking back, I feel so bad, and I feel so ashamed for acting how I acted, that I was still saying that, but I deserve this time, or I deserve this attention because you promised me this attention. And he was like trying to make me understand that, no, you don't understand. You will have all the attention when I get there. Mm-hmm. But my family can only get my attention now. And I still feel so bad for arguing for this. So I feel both of the sides now as I've matured a bit and tried to understand it a little bit more. And we've had a long conversation about this. And obviously I will never be able to be in your shoes, girls, or in his shoes. But yeah, I think a little bit more empathy could have been good.
Yeah, but I think on both ends, I could have been a little bit more empathic as well towards Nacho's situation in our case. Because I tried to explain myself, but I didn't take into account how he might feel, that this is a huge responsibility he's taking. Because his responsibility was, as soon as I arrived, to have everything prepared and to take care of me, to make sure that I'm fine. And I didn't get that. And then the moment we moved together, I realized, okay, I didn't even try to understand him. So why he wasn't trying to understand me, because both of us, we went through a bunch of emotions. And it was difficult to have a clear head at some point, especially quite before moving. Like I would say maybe 2 weeks before, when you start realizing, hey, it's happening. You're working for it for so long. That's the goal now. It's happening.
Those last 2 weeks, I was a hot ass mess. My family and I went to a restaurant and I heard this like loud noise behind me and I like jumped out of my chair like, oh my God, I can't do this. But like, I definitely feel both y'all. Like those last like 2 weeks, like you could be calm that whole time, but then those last 2 weeks, you're like, oh shit, this is really happening. This is serious and this is legit. And me and the person that left their family, like I had told Twans ahead of time, I was like, I'm gonna try really hard to not project these thoughts onto you, but if I accidentally say I'm doing this, I'm leaving everything behind for you, don't take it too personally. And I'm gonna be very aware of my thoughts and try not to say that, but like that's a general feeling that I might have.
Yeah, but don't think that it's not a. So for me, he never said that he was moving for me, but I felt it because like obviously he was moving here for me. And oh my God, for literally like 3 or 4 weeks, I had this mantra that like, it's not your responsibility. It's not just you. He's a big guy. He could have decided any other ways, but he himself decided this way. So don't take it personally. Cause like I felt a lot of guilt for tearing him apart from his family, tearing him apart from his life, making him moving here for me. And I actually had to fight this guilt. And it was very hard to make myself understand that it's not my fault, basically, that he's doing this stuff. But on the other hand, I do understand, like, because Few Jasmine moved there for him and he moved here for me. And that's the truth, kind of. Both parties had a lot of difficulties and like emotional baggage to take care of.
The guilt point. I'm like saying that now, I'm a little bit ashamed of myself. Actually, not a little bit. I am ashamed of myself because I made Nacho guilty for a couple of things in the beginning. So I never spoke it out loud, but there were moments where and this brings us directly, us closing the distance. There were moments I realized, okay, this is not my happy place. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be in this city. I don't want to be with those people surrounding me because in the beginning we moved together with his roommate. So I moved to his apartment and he was living with 2 male roommates. And I felt very uncomfortable, very, very uncomfortable. And I made him responsible for several things. So every time I was doubting something, every time I wasn't feeling happy or I felt like, okay, I'm just too emotional, I made him responsible for the emotions I was feeling and not realizing that I'm the only one who's responsible for it, because I could have changed something, but instead I would just fall into a hole after approximately 1 week after moving to Miami. And I would cry. I had several breakdowns. Normally, I'm a very positive thinking person, but I wasn't positive thinking at all. And I made him responsible for so many things he wasn't responsible for, because in the end, it was my decision to move. We could have figured out something else, most probably, but I decided to move. I decided to take the step at that time. So it was my responsibility, and I made him responsible for it. And it's just like, thinking about it, I would never do it again, because I mean, I have been through it already. I know how it feels like, but I couldn't control my emotions. Not at all. I couldn't control them anymore. And for approximately, I would say 4 weeks or even 5 weeks, I was a mess. So, and he was strong. He was so strong. He was understanding and everything, which I really appreciate. And this is something I will never forget, because in the beginning, when he had to be there, he was there and he was like, okay, I'm not going to leave you. And I try to understand you, but you have to make yourself understand. Like, tell me what's going on. What are you thinking? Don't be afraid to share your emotions, your feeling with me. You have to talk. I can't know what's going on if you're not telling me. And I had to learn it, but it was a long, long, long journey until I realized, okay, yeah, he's right. He is right in so many things.
I think that was like the one thing that I was so appreciative for Thomas, was just how much he showed up when I got to Finland. Like, as soon as I got off the plane, he was like ready, or like mentally ready. And I know that was such a burden, or I mean, maybe burden is not the right word, but like that was such a, like, I don't even know. I'm just happy he took the initiative and like stepped up. It made me feel confident. It made me feel comfortable, and it made me feel like I made the right decision to move here to be with him. Like, because he was able to be there and be such a supporting person, like, when you're new in a country.
I think neither of the parties should feel guilty, because, like, partially you were right too, because not all of the responsibility was on him, obviously, but a little bit was on him, because, like, you really moved there for him, I guess. And I think I was taking a little bit of a responsibility too. I just tried to not to make it to be my fault, like 100%, but I was still aware, and I still am aware that, like, it was kind of like 20% still my fault, to put it this way. So I think we both should learn that it wasn't our fault and it wasn't our responsibility totally. Like, it was the couple's decision. It was a decision we made together. And so neither of us should feel 100% responsible for it, but maybe like a 50-50 responsibility or something like that.
Yeah, but what do you do if you have this thought? I mean, this is something you can't control, and it just comes up, and suddenly you have this idea that you're responsible for anything, or that you maybe even thinking that you made a wrong decision. And of course, in the beginning, you're overwhelmed with a bunch of things. So what helped me a lot was talking it out, and I couldn't handle my emotions, as I said before, for quite a while. So it was a long, long journey for me to understand what's going on and what am I actually thinking? What am I actually really thinking? And what I do and I know myself pretty well, but what I do in such a situation is that I have to take myself out of the situation. I have to step back, and I have to be by myself as well. So it doesn't help at all if there are 10,000 voices around me trying to give me advice, trying to tell me what to do, what not to do. What helps me actually is if I take myself out of the situation, if Nacho leaves me alone. And by leaving me alone, it really means like leave me alone for a couple of hours, and I have to think about it. I have to have a clear head in order to tell you what's going on. But I feel like this thought of guilt is something that just quite naturally coming into your head, and then it's on you how you handle the situation. If you're going to talk about it, if you're going to proceed it by yourself, if you want to talk about it with friends or so, whatever. So there are many ways of expressing your feelings. It's just very important that at some point you address them as well, in order not to be alone with your thoughts. And as you said, Panka, you did have the thought as well of this responsibility, of the guilt. And it's not only one end, it's both ends. So why not just talking about it once you know, okay, what am I actually thinking about it? Jasmine, we talked about it in the episode we recorded with you guys. So we talked about doubting the relationship. But did you doubt that moving to Finland is the wrong decision at some point?
The only time I doubted it was like during the same period of our relationship where I doubted the long distance part. Because that was the time that I started saving money. So it was like, this is the moment I'm making a commitment. But as far as like the last few months, or even like being out here now for 5 or 6 months, I haven't doubted my decision at all. Like I'm happy I made this decision, and I would do it all over again.
So it feels right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Panka?
I've never doubted my relationship, and especially not after we like got together as a couple. From then on, it was just clear that no matter what, we're gonna do this. And I did fear a little bit, or I did have a little bit of fear because I've never been in this situation before. And also he was my first like real long-term relationship. So it was double the fear. And like this feeling of, oh my God, what am I doing? Mm-hmm. I am going to close the distance with an American man. What's going on? What is this? And I was in total shock at some points, but it was never doubt. Like I knew that this was the right thing to do. And yes, I've had a little bit of a fear, a little bit of a, oh my God, what's happening? What am I doing? Kind of feeling. But there was never doubt.
I understand that the moment, in Jess' case, the moment she entered Finland, and in your case, Panka, the moment you picked up Michael, that this was the moment where you were like, okay, this is a new start of a new beginning, if you could say so. So it's getting real. We're closing the distance. It's finally happening. Obviously, a bunch of emotions. Again, I feel like long distance is like it's so much emotions in general, but the moment you close the distance, you were working for it for so long, and then it's suddenly happening, and then you're realizing, wow, it's there. And then you're like happy and sad at the same time, happy for taking this step, but also sad for leaving everything you know behind. So for the one who's moving, who's making the move, and then for the one who's receiving the significant other, to have this responsibility. We talked about it before. If you look back, the moment it happened, the moment you saw each other and you knew, okay, we closed it, we made it. How did you feel? What can you describe the feeling? Is there a word for it?
Relief.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be the one word.
Yeah, for me it was undescribable. Like, I was very nervous beforehand. My father took me to the airport, but we were late, and then the plane was late too. And I was waiting for like 15 minutes, and I started to worry because he was supposed to be there. And I was like, oh my God, what if he was already here? But I just can't recognize him because I've never seen him in real life, only through like Skype and everything. And what has happened? What could have possibly happened that he's not here right now? So it was a mess at the airport. And then the doors opened, and the people who were on the plane were starting to come out. And the moment I saw him, I got totally calm. What I was feeling is undescribable. I was just looking at him and like, yep, there comes the rest of my life. And it was beautiful. I was thinking about a lot of things, and I was feeling probably a lot of things. It's probably still my most favorite memory ever. That moment when I saw him coming and when we were hugging at the airport, it's wow. So it was just beautiful. And I was like, yeah, this is my home. This is right. And this is how it should be.
There's no word, no emotion that can possibly describe what you're feeling when you realize, okay, that's it. What I think is interesting as well is that, at least in my case, I can only talk out of my experience. Obviously, I knew that, okay, it's a new chapter of our life now that's going to start. I still didn't know how this chapter will exactly look like. And for me, it was a bunch of other emotions as well, because I was also worried, like, what are going to be the next steps? I do have my savings. How long can I live out of my savings? Will I find a job? Is my English good enough, for example? Those were also my Spanish, because in Miami, most of the people are talking Spanish. Quite often, like I would say 3 days later, 3 days after closing the distance, I start thinking about, okay, what's going to be next? Obviously, I have thought about it before, but I never realized that I have to put a lot of effort, like a lot of thinking into it, when it comes to, okay, how is our life going to look like within the next few months? And this is when the planning kept on going, because it's not just closing the distance. Obviously, there are a few other things you have to take care of afterwards. Talking about that, how did it feel in your case? And so what steps did you take care of after you guys closed the distance?
Well, for us, like, we were trying to get ready for our wedding in January. But I would say the first month after closing the distance felt like a regular meetup. It was just being happy, like, that we could be together again and being a couple. But then after that first month of, like, celebration and everything, we sat down and talked about, like, what we want in, like, our daily lives. Like, what are the things he wants to do? What are the things I want to do? What are things that we can do together? And, like, even redefining, like, how we like to go on dates now, and our work days, or who cooks on what days of the week and stuff like that. It's setting up, like, your lives together. And Swans and I are very, like, analytical people, so we like to have a plan and, like, create a schedule and make details, like, for each other, so that way we're on the same page and nothing gets miscommunicated.
And in your case, Panka?
We had a full week together in, like, a vacation in this little Airbnb, and it was like the honeymoon phase for us. He met my family, my friends. We were going sightseeing, getting to know Hungary a little bit. We were visiting restaurants, bars, so we really enjoyed ourselves. And then he had to go to this orientation for his job. We had to manage a lot of paperwork. He had to go to the doctor to get a paper that, like, yes, he can work. And then he moved to his current little city where he's working. And we had to go to the immigration office to get his work visa. So after that 1 week of vacation, it was really hard work to get everything together, all the papers, all the checkups, to make sure that everything's fine with his work. He had to meet his boss, his contact person. So after that, it was very, very, very messy, and it took us like a month to get used to everything, especially because after like 2 or 3 weeks, he got sick. Because, so Texas January is like 20 degrees Celsius, and Hungary January is like -5 degrees Celsius. And, his body was very surprised. that it's this cold here. So he got a little bit of a cold or something like that. So we had to take care of that too. So it took a long time to get ready with everything, but then he was able to start working. I had to go back to university, and I had to go back to my workplace because I just started working, like back then I just started working at a gym as a receptionist. So we kind of had to adjust to our lives, and it was very difficult. But yeah, like after a month, we were good again.
So after you sorted a few things out, and obviously you had to get used to the cold weather in Hungary in January.
Yeah.
Europe can be quite cold partial-wise. And
yes.
Jasmine can basically tell us a little bit more about that in Finland.
The cold never bothered me anyways.
And Nacho would die. Nacho, I mean, no. I think I told you already that Nacho will not travel to Finland in a spring or a winter.
I mean, it's really not that bad as long as you layer up and, like, you know, have the good clothes for it. I had to wear leggings underneath my jeans today and, like, multiple layers under my big jacket, so that was warm. We walked like a mile or two.
It seems like you adjusted quite fast. It's very interesting because I don't know how long it took in Michael's case. You said roughly 1 month, right, Panka?
Around, yeah, to get used to everything.
And can you, like, how long did it take until you had a routine as a couple living in the same country?
We still don't really have a routine. At first, it took us from February, we had this routine of me being in Budapest for the week because that's where my university is and that's where my workplace used to be. And then I'll travel to his little town in the weekends. And it was like this for a month. And then COVID came and my university closed and my workplace closed, like the gyms had to close. And there was a little bit of a lockdown kind of thing. Like you could leave your home, but only for very special reasons, like to grab some groceries, and that was it. And so we had this routine of me spending 3 weeks at home with my family, and then spending 3 weeks with him in his town. And we did this for a couple months until like summer. And then in the summer, the virus was like the first wave of the virus was gone. So like we could do stuff together. We could travel a little bit inside the country, and we were a little bit more free to go wherever we want to be. So summer was very hectic. And then from September, the virus came back. Mm-hmm. And so now I'm doing online university still. So I'm having online classes every day, which is cool because like then I can move freely. And I got a job here in his town. Now it has changed. So like now I'm spending the weekdays here because I'm working here with him. And I go back to Budapest to my family in weekends or like every other weekend. And kind of that's our routine now. We've had like 2 or 3 different routines throughout like the past year. We hope that it will stay like this, like weekdays here and weekends at home.
Mm-hmm. And Jasmine and Thomas, they do have a routine, obviously, because they do have a calendar of who is going to cook when, which I love.
You know, I feel like it's easier when you know what you're going into. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, it's not like set in stone. Like, we went to the grocery store on our way back from his grandfather's house today, and I was like, yo, you cooking this week? And he's like, all right, cool. What do you want me to make? And we just talk about it then. And so that way, like, not one person is having all the responsibility. It just, I'd rather us do it all together than one person feeling like they got to do everything. That's just, no one has time for that.
You do have a routine, obviously.
Yeah.
And you had it like almost from the beginning. It took how long until you got to that point?
So after a month, like we started to get into the routine because like I said, I need some structure in my life, and that's just like how I manage like my anxiety too. Like it's by creating those routines, creating that structure, you're like, okay, well, like I know what is going to happen in like this time frame and whatnot. But of course, like the wedding and when Finland wasn't in its current like situation, like we were able to go on our honeymoon. And like, so like all around that time, it was structured chaos. Like we knew we could do some things, but it was hard to like keep our normal flow. You're getting married and you're having a honeymoon. Like it's going to be difficult. Like,
yeah, no, I'm just asking the question because what I realized quite soon is in our case, it took approximately 3 months until we had somehow a routine. And it started basically when I started working. I mean, we are together, living together since 2017, summer 2017, so June to be precise. And it's just like so interesting if you think back how much you can get used to a person. We're spending 24/7. I mean, of course, now because of COVID, we are barely leaving the house as well. He's working right now in the room next door. And it's just like sometimes I feel like we are an old couple that we've been like this forever, like the last 20 years, or I don't know. It's just so weird to think about that at some point that we had a long distance relationship, that we handled a bunch of paperwork, and that in such a short time that you can get used to a person in the way we are used to each other, which I think is quite amazing. But sometimes it's also like, hey, do you remember at what point we've been 5 years ago? It's very interesting to think back. It's surreal, definitely. So I'm just wondering how it is, like how you feel about that. If this is something, I mean, in your case, it's quite fresh, if I could say so. But if you also feel like, hey, we're so connected and we're living together, and it feels like it has always been like this.
After we got married, it became more like that for us, because then it's like, well, no one can do anything to us now. We're married. Ha ha ha. Like you can't separate us. That's when it started getting like, we've had a life together now for 5 months, and it, like you said, it feels like we've been doing this for like the past like 5 years instead of 5 months. Like it was, for us, it was, I would say, getting married. That was like the final, like, yep, you close the distance, you're married, you're together. Like no take backsies.
No. Is there anything, Panka and Jasmine, or we were talking about the positive aspects of, closing the distance, being together, seeing each other every day in Jasmine's case, in Panka's case, almost every day. But is there a negative aspect as well of closing the distance?
The paperwork. Oh, the paperwork. I hate it. And the insecurity of, because like we're not married. And he's only on a working visa. So basically, so the chance is really low, but basically his workplace can say any day that like, okay, we don't need you anymore, or so he's having his contract with this company that hired him, and they can say any day that like, oh, hey, we found a better school for you, so you're moving, I don't know, 300 kilometers away. So his visa for now is due August 31st of 2021, if I remember well. But there's always a chance of them not renewing it. So although our life is kind of secure now and we got used to each other, and really it does feel like that we've been like this forever, there's a little bit of risk. And so the risk factor is there that anything can happen at any time, because we're not legally together, or like we're not legally married, and he's not having a citizenship here or like a very permanent visa. and all the paperwork that comes with it, like the contract renewal, doing this. So like going back to the immigration office every year, we have to fill out loads of papers with like questions like I don't even understand, although it's written in my mother tongue. Like there was a question I remember. I'm sorry, I just have to tell this because it's so ridiculous. There was a question that said, I am willing to take care of my children who are back at home or something like that. And we were looking at each other like, should we say yes because we would if he would have children, or should we say no? But it doesn't mean that we're not taking care about those kids, but those kids don't exist. So like, it was full of stupid questions like this. And it was a super long process with a lot of stress. So unfortunately, closing the distance doesn't end with, you meeting at the airport and then end credits and the end and Academy Awards. But it's really hard work after that too. Like you have to learn how to live together and how to accommodate to each other. Maybe it's not everything is how you expect it to be, because everyone has their bad sides or their little bad habits. So you have to learn about that too. The paperwork and still this insecurity is a very, very big negative aspect of closing the distance.
I would say like the other end of that thought is like more of like maintaining your own cultural identity, especially like now since we closed the distance during a pandemic. It's hard to go out and like make friends outside of your partner. Like most of the friends I have are the friends that I've met through Tuamas or like in like the social circles that he is in. But like as far as American friends, it's harder to find them, and it's harder to like have that kind of like cultural break with your brain. Like luckily I found like one girl from the US that moved to Finland, and her and I will talk on the phone, and it's just like, it's nice because we can feel comfortable in our own language. If you're closing the distance internationally, a part of you is going to have to assimilate to that culture. And it's going to be in ways you don't think, like how you communicate or your body language or gestures. So that's a huge negative part. It's like a part of you is not here anymore. Like Jasmine in the US has a different energy than Jasmine in Finland.
Mm.
Some of that's good, some of that's bad, but you got to make sure you remember like who you are and where you came from. And you have to find others that you can connect with so you can maintain that cultural identity.
Yes. And what's going to happen is that you are going to somehow mix both cultures, at least in your bubble, in your relationship bubble.
For sure.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
And it's also, that's I love it. I really enjoy this part of, or after closing the distance, that you start to create your own language, because obviously my English is not perfect. His German is not perfect. I speak a little bit of Spanish. So it's like, it's a mix of several languages sometimes. And I know that this happens to you as well, Jasmine, because we talked about it a while ago already. But also that the culture starts to mix somehow. And you adapt to it on the one hand. And obviously part of you is still, like in my case, the German culture. So you have a little bit of everything. And I really enjoy this part because I get to pick the best parts of both sides now and adapt it to our own culture kind of thing. And I just love that part. So, but yeah, it can be overwhelming. It can be like, especially in the beginning, that you do have the feeling that culture-wise, that you kind of lose your identity. And this is also something I noticed when moving to Miami, especially when speaking not my mother tongue. I feel like every time I'm speaking English, or every time I'm trying to speak Spanish, I'm another person. I don't know why. Sometimes it's easier for me even to express things in English than to express them in German, or I'm even more self-confident in English than talking in German, which is super weird, but it just happens. And it all has its pros and cons. And of course, obviously, the positive aspects are all above here, and there are just a few negative aspects you do have to deal with as well. And I think it's also important to talk about it. So thank you so much for being so honest. If there's one advice, like to everyone who's planning to close the distance soon, who has a date maybe even already, or to those ones who closed the distance already, what advice could you give, or what advices could you give?
Maybe the biggest advice would be stay realistic. It's very, very, very easy to be overwhelmed with the fact and to live in this constant daydream or fairy tale world of closing the distance. But you have to take care of a lot of things. Yeah, you have to have a passport. You have to have some savings. If you can have a job, please. So I know it's very hard to stay realistic and to focus about all the administration and everything, but you will be grateful once you've closed the distance that you're not there without a penny, without a job, without a place to stay. But if you do have these things, then it will be easier to focus on the good things and to just live in the moment. Because despite the difficulties and despite all the paperwork and the administration you have to do, closing the distance is the most beautiful thing, or one of the most beautiful things a long distance couple can experience. So just enjoy and be in the moment, but yeah, think realistically.
You're overwhelmed with so many things, and of course your head is playing several scenarios of how it's going to be like when closing the distance. And this is, yeah, of course, especially maybe as a woman, you think about it like it's going to be a fairy tale. It's going to be so amazing. Everything will be just perfect when closing the distance. And then you get to the point and then you realize, damn it, we still have to take care of our papers. Even like 4 years after, I mean, Nacho and I, we will celebrate our 4th anniversary in 3 weeks already. But even then, you still have to take care of a bunch of things, and miscommunication is still a point in our relationship we're working on. So not everything is perfect in our relationship. Like, I mean, nobody's perfect. Also to be aware of that there are going to be a few other challenges waiting ahead of you, like in any other relationship as well. And it doesn't end with just closing the distance. It's not like, okay, we closed it and they lived happily ever after. There are always other things that come across. If it's like, okay, where are we going to live on the long run? Can we actually plan the next 2 years? How are we going to communicate in general? How are you feeling? Nacho is still overwhelmed. I mean, even though we moved to Germany in 2019 in January, he still didn't get used to Germany, and he will never be. So, and I have to be aware of that as well on the long run, that Germany might not be the best decision because he will not feel comfortable here. And we have to deal with it. We have to figure it out at some point, not now, but in the future. So yeah, it's not a fairy tale. You used to have to work on so many things, that's for sure, yeah. Jasmine, your advices.
Definitely say to remember that y'all are a team. Like, y'all chose to do this decision together. Y'all made your efforts to make this situation happen. Like, and I mean, y'all have already said it beautifully, but closing the distance does not mean like all of our work is done in the relationship. You have to now redefine what your relationship is after closing the distance. And the only way you can do that is if y'all remain a team. Y'all keep helping each other out. Y'all keep boosting each other. And you keep communicating just like you did the whole time when you were long distance. You gotta stay as a team and keep that vibe going.
Thank you. Is there anything else you would like to share with everyone who's listening?
If you are like overwhelmed with closing the distance or feel like you need some extra help, you can check out the Closing the Distance binder set on my website. It has a packing list for you. It has like some self-care guides in there, as well as some relationship check-ins to help you and your partner stay connected during this time and to really make you feel like you're finally fully prepared to close the distance and be together.
Yeah, I checked out that binder already, because since you're working on it, the moment you almost finished it, I think you sent it over to me, and it really contains a lot of valuable tips, advices. You do have, correct me if I'm wrong, or if I remember wrongly, a financial plan in there as well, like what to think about before closing the distance, tips, tricks. And you put a lot of effort in everything you're doing. So for everyone who's listening, if you don't know Jazz yet, check out her Instagram, check out her binder. She's sharing valuable information in her stories. I love you LDR tips, your daily LDR tips. Yeah, just like she's doing amazing things for the community, especially for the LDR community, but also for multicultural couples in general.
Thank you. Check it out. Yeah. Jazz up your wanderlust.
This is where you can find her. And Panka is hosting a podcast herself, sharing her experience, sharing her part of her story as well, sharing very valuable tips. Well, so Panka, what exactly is it you're doing in general?
On my podcast, I am talking about a lot of long-distance relationship-related things, and also what it's like to be in a multicultural relationship. I actually have an episode. It might be out by the time this will be out, which talks a little bit more about what it's like to close the distance as the receiving partner. So there I am talking a bit more about my doubts and about my feelings and about how I prepared for this. So if you would like to, you can check it out. The podcast is called USA to Hungary, and my Instagram is also USA to Hungary. So it's very simple. So if you would like to catch up with us and our story and learn a little bit more about multicultural LDRs, then yeah, check it out.
Thank you so much, Panka. I do think that it's very important to give a little bit of my advice to connect with others. And it's so amazing, like every time we are having guests in our podcast or every time we're connecting with others on Instagram, to know that there's so many out there having a similar story. And even though if the story is a different one, there's so much to connect with. So there's so many things that are similar, no matter which religion or which culture or no matter which language you're speaking. So just connect with others inside the community, connect with Jasmine, connect with Panka, connect with all those amazing people that can really share information, tips with you, and that will understand what you're going through. I think this is so important, and I'm happy for everyone who's creating a platform and who's connecting people like us, for example. It's just amazing to have you as guests today and to get to know your story a little bit better. And for you to be so open towards the idea of talking about closing the distance in detail, because again, the work is not done with just closing the distance. There's so much more afterwards. And I think we made it pretty clear in this little mini session we just had here. And I really appreciate you guys sharing all this valuable tips and this valuable information here in our podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Glad we can share our stories and help other couples out, make them feel more confident in their decisions.
Yeah. Like, I remember I would have loved to hear a podcast like this or hear a story like this when I was starting this long distance relationship, or just the closing the distance process.
Yeah.
Me too.
Same.
We hope you enjoyed to listen to our stories, to our experience. We hope you've learned a few things. We hope we were able to share valuable information with you guys. As always, if you still have some questions, just go ahead and ask us directly. So if it's Panka, if it's Jazz, if it's me, you will find all links in the side notes. And before you hang up or before you press the stop button, I do have a little gift for you. So for everyone who was listening up to the end, I guess that you were interested in this specific topic, which is closing the distance. And I am going to turn 30 years old, which is crazy to think about, yes, but I'm going to turn 30 on the 28th of April. I'm not a birthday person, and I always try to somehow avoid my own birthday, so I'm a totally birthday Grinch. But I was thinking about what I can do to support you guys. As you know, everything we're doing because we know how difficult it can be to date on distance, and we have been there. We try everything to basically share our experience with you guys. And as you see, other people do the same. And one of those people is, as mentioned before in the previous conversation, Jasmine. And Jasmine is quite active when it comes to supporting others, especially in long-distance relationships. And Jasmine created a binder. So this binder includes a lot of valuable information, such as a financial plan, a packing list, a list, what type of documents you should definitely think about. It contains more than 45 pages, and I purchased one of those binders online, and I would like to give this binder to someone who is quite close to close the distance and who could really use it. And I just don't want to gift it away or raffle it, because I really want to gift it to someone who could really, really use this binder. For that, just contact me on Instagram. It's International Love Story. This binder will be gifted on my birthday, so on the 28th of April. As I mentioned before, to someone who could really use it. I don't want to make a big deal out of it, so just contact me on International Love Story. And meanwhile, follow us on Instagram and or Facebook. It's International Love Story. Rate this podcast episode or this podcast in general, wherever you're listening to podcasts. If you do have any questions, as always, feel free to ask us anything. Thank you so much for listening. And the next episode will be published on the 20th of April. In this episode, I'm going to have a little conversation with Nacho. So long time not here, but yeah, I'm going to talk to Nacho about several things, about what's going on right now, about how he's feeling being separated from his family. Things in Argentina are quite crazy right now. He's homesick, so emotions. And yeah, hope to hear you soon. Please take care and have a lovely day, morning or evening, wherever you're listening to this episode right now.